You're listening to the Wilmac Wire, the podcast that's designed to give you a glimpse into a growing SaaS company, specifically in the realm of customer interaction technology. From customer experience to data management, we'll talk about it here. Thank you for tuning in. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Wilmac Wire. My name is Emily Miller with Wilmac Technologies, and man, I have an awesome episode planned for you today. The interview itself is with Steve Blood, who is the VP of Market Intelligence and Evangelism at Five9, who is one of Wilmac Technologies' partners. And Steve was a former Gartner analyst, and Gartner is a research and advisory company in the technology sector. So Steve's job for well over 20 years involved talking with customers and end users about the challenges that they're facing and how the different technologies that are available to them, so on and so forth. Essentially, he just chatted with them about their challenges. So he has a ton of, as you can tell in his title, market intelligence, So I was able to interview Steve and have a great conversation with him where he provided his insights on a wide variety of topics. And I really just wanted to thank him again for hopping on this episode. I truly believe that you'll enjoy it, to all of our listeners. And before I turn it over to that interview, I just want to shout out Five9. Our very own Jim Giblin and Ben Bowen are at the Five9 SKO this week. They'll probably just have wrapped it up by the time this episode releases. I'm sure we'll enjoy it. I'm sure they'll get to see Steve there in person. So again, a big shout out to Five9 and to Steve Blood. I hope you enjoy this episode of the Wilmac Wire. All right, Steve, thanks for joining me on the Wilmac Wire today. To our listeners, Steve Blood is the VP of Market Intelligence and Evangelism at Five9. He's got over 30 plus years of experience in the customer service technology, over 23 years of experience working at Gartner, and now he's at Five9 kicking butt and taking names, So after doing some of my initial research on Steve, I just wanted to mention a few things that I noticed when reading more about you, Steve, and looking at your LinkedIn and that sort of stuff. But so a few things stood out, like your deep focus on solving customer challenges. We like to talk a lot about customer challenges here because we wouldn't have business if they weren't struggling with something, and leveraging that data and collaboration to drive innovation in the CX space. I really enjoyed reading about that. And then just some notable achievements too, to add to your long list of credibility. But you were pioneering Gartner's Magic Quadrant for CCaaS for quite some time. And then you've done quite a bit of research on digital customer service and AI use cases, which I'm sure we'll talk about more and how that translates into your role at Five9. But he's legit to our listeners. This is a really exciting interview. I'm super excited for it. So
I get the stamp of approval, do I?
Steve, I'll let you start. And I just wanted to ask you to share a little bit about your journey and what drew you into this role at Five9.
Thank you. Yeah, Emily. Thanks for having me on. This is great to spend some time with you.
Yeah.
It's nearly a year now.
Wow.
March 18th, 2024 was when I joined. And so it's been quite a whirlwind. So as you said, I did just over 23 years at Gartner. I did have a proper job before Gartner. I was in product marketing at a call center vendor called Rockwell. I worked in the European business unit, and that's kind of, it got acquired, and I think it's all part of Aspect now, but all their technologies disappeared and things. But that was a very, very long time ago. So I was at Rockwell, and I went to Gartner at that point. And so during my time in Gartner, I've done lots of roles. Most importantly, I've always focused on advising primarily end user organizations. So a lot of people, especially in the vendor community, would say, Steve Blood, he's a bit arrogant. He's not a nice person to know. And from a business perspective, that was because I was looking after the interests of my clients.
Right.
Now I have a completely different role now, but so obviously it's a useful background to have. But I think ultimately 23 years. I was just at a point where I needed to do something new. So I was considering leaving Gartner for a while, and I had a couple of options open to me, and I have to say, I have to give credit to Nikki Hall, who's a CMO. I've known Nikki for over 20 years. She took the CMO role at Five9 about a year ago, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I kind of led on that I was looking at something new, she said, "I think you'll be a great addition to my team of marketeers." As she's built quite a team here at Five9. So I kind of thought about it, and then I had some calls with the executives and things, and we had some history, and things, but it all kind of worked out well. And so, why Five9? Well, I have to say, I've analysed Five9 for 10, 12 years, if not longer. And I've always been impressed by the fact this is an organic company. Okay, last year we hit $1 billion run rate. We are the first company to do that, right? Our major competitors have all had legs up, or and the bigger companies than us, NICE and Genesis, they've had a leg up because they had legacy businesses to convert and so on. So not taking that away from what they've achieved, but I think as a company from organic growth, that's been really impressive. Also, if I was to leave Gartner, where was I going to go? If I was going to work anywhere, what was I going to do? I've been in this space, this customer service, customer experience space so long, I don't know anything else. I couldn't do ERP or some back office automation and things. So it made sense. This is my comfort zone. It made sense that I'd come to this part of the industry. So you put that together with the fact that it's partly about relationships, and Five9 fitted the bill quite well. Also, Five9 is on a strong international expansion route, and me based in Spain, it's just further evidence of, if you like, of that expansion that we're taking on.
Right. Oh, that's awesome. And really unique history. I did read in one of the articles, I think that you wrote, actually, it was like why I joined Five9. It was super interesting, and I loved the perspective, and I thought that was a great marketing tactic, to share, marketing person within me. But Nikki Hall, I saw that mention of kind of that connection between the two of you, which is super cool. But like you said, this is your comfort zone. But what keeps you excited about the CX space in general?
I think it's interesting because in the 23 or so years I was at Gartner, I always did customer service and more recently CX. It evolved, the terms evolved things. But I also did a lot in the collaboration space, so unified communications. I was one of the lead analysts with when Cisco came to market with IP telephony in about 2004. In fact, actually, when I joined Gartner, my then boss said, he said, you got, in addition to doing the contact center stuff, you've got to keep an eye on this voice over IP, because Cisco reckons they got something that's going to go big. And sure enough, it did. So I tracked that side of the industry as well. So I was speaking to IT leaders that bought communications technologies, and for smaller organizations, they were in charge of everything. They bought networking, they bought mobiles, they bought contact center, PBXs, everything. It was all under their domain. As you worked in larger organizations, those responsibilities were separated out. But the interesting thing for me was when I had conversations about customer service, it was all about how do we invest in technology to deliver better services and make our operations more efficient.
Right.
When we had conversations around investing in telephony, PBXs, and unified communications, it was all about how can I do this for less cost?
Right.
Boring. And it was really difficult to express value in that part of the business. I remember having a conversation with the CIO saying one time that unified communications makes your employees more effective and efficient. Oh, really? He said. So what do they do with that time? Do they go home early? Do they drink more coffee? Do they actually do more work? And of course, that was very difficult to actually define doing more work. In the customer service space, we measure people every second of the day. We know when technology delivers a operational benefit or an employee benefit. So I think from that perspective, that's what I find so exciting about CX is we're constantly looking at how do we use technologies to improve on customer experiences, operational improvements, employees, and so on. Now, have we done a great job? I know, as I'll publicly say, last year, the Forrester report CX index has never been lower. We had a bad year in the CX space last year. Way too much. We over pivoted on automation. Very much focused internally on me as a company. What can I do to reduce or remove phone calls and emails from my customers? Not looking at it from a perspective of how can we use this technology to improve the experiences our customers have. So we see that pivot this year in terms of how companies are thinking about that. So yeah, for me, I think this is better. So I'm quite excited by the opportunities that we see this year and feasibly into next as well.
Right. Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that. It's very interesting. I could listen to your accent too. Like we have two guys based up in Toronto. One's from London and the other one is from Scotland. So they always hop on calls and they're like, where are you guys based? And they're like, we're in Toronto. Everyone's always like, we love your accents. And I know it's probably a thing you hear often, but I just had to point it out.
Very good.
All right, moving into this next section. Like you said, 23 plus years as an analyst at Gartner. How has that experience shaped the way you think about customer experience and the role of technology?
I think the biggest influence for me was at Gartner. Every day I did multiple inquiries, mostly phone calls. In later years, they were all video calls with end users, companies, individuals that were trying to get a benefit from technology.
Right.
And so that totally shapes your perspective on the industry. So, when a vendor launches something new, you gauge how successful that's going to be by listening to my clients at the time. I was listening to my clients. How do they perceive that? How does that fit for them? And so when you do that for 23 years, it becomes ingrained on the ways of working. And so I think, and so many stories and scenarios that I played back in my head, and I played with my colleagues. The collaboration for me was really key. I was at Gartner, I worked at home. I do at Five9 as well. My colleagues were internationally. We did a lot of virtual meetings and things like that. And so collectively we're able to shape and to sort of, really gauge where success was going to be. But listening to those clients who were customers of technology providers, like customers of ours now, it really gives you a perspective of what's important. And I think one of the things that I've brought to Five9 is having, when I should just quickly cycle back. About 5 years ago, Gartner bought a company called Corporate Executive Board. Now, CEB was focused on the business leaders, and they have multiple practices, and one of them was customer service. And so when they merged that together, so I was mostly speaking to technology people. So the clients that had the seats that could get access to me were tech staff. When we merged those businesses together, I started talking to, so about 5-6 years ago, I started talking to a lot of customer service leaders, CX leaders, as well as IT leaders, enterprise architects, and so on. And so you started to see these two different viewpoints. And it was really interesting just because all the time you're listening to their challenges, how can I help, thinking about where the roadblocks are in their business. So I found that incredibly valuable. I miss it, actually. I mean, I get to talk to our customers, which is great, but that diversity of opinions that I had access to was amazing. So all of that has shaped me in terms of what I think is important, where I think technology fits in the grand scheme of things, and also to be a little bit practical about and pragmatic as to how quickly these technologies can be adopted. So I think it's balancing that, and of course also, naturally I'm biased. I'm biased towards Five9 as my employer, but equally I still get to retain the analyst in me. So I do a lot of market intelligence is all
Yeah.
about understanding the market and being able
Right.
to feed back insights on that. So I still get to do that bit, which is
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah, that's super interesting. 'Cause one of the things that I struggle with in my role so often is like I'm not the one talking to our customers. So how can I
Right.
effectively market to them if I don't know what they're thinking, the challenges that they're going through?
Right.
Like you said, the differences between technology buyer and a business buyer, you know?
Yeah.
So that's super interesting. I definitely can see why Five9 snatched you up because you have those one relationships, but you've just had such a wide breadth of conversations with people in different situations. So that's really cool. And thank you for chatting about that.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna keep us moving into
Yep.
the struggles that these
Mhm.
customers are facing, you know. So from your vantage point, what are the biggest challenges that our organizations are facing in CX today?
Yeah, so I've got a data point that's very, very recent. A couple of weeks ago, we did a webinar with Call Center Helper, and we asked that question. What's stopping you from being successful?
Mm-hmm.
Competing priorities,
Yeah.
being pulled in different directions, the fire hose, the
Mm-hmm.
trying to deal with attrition in the customer service center, the pressure from CFO. You've got to invest in generative AI because apparently it's going to make your business more effective.
Mm-hmm.
Mergers, acquisitions, all sorts of challenges. And I think one of the big ones right now is um, I remember I did the occasional client inquiry
Mm-hmm.
when on the line I can't call it a line anymore. That shows how old I am. It's not a line, it's a session. I would have the customer service department, my
Mm-hmm.
traditional client, shall we say.
Yeah.
There was also the social media team who were doing all the
Mm-hmm.
monitoring and responding in LinkedIn, in Twitter and
Right.
Facebook and things. And also the digital, often they were responsible for sales as well as service, the digital team.
Mm.
They were all separate departments,
Jeez.
all doing things separately with separate service levels, with separate technologies, with separate motivations. And occasionally I would get on, there would be someone who's a CXO, sort of then someone
Mm-hmm.
overarching all of these departments.
Yeah.
And we'd have a conversation. Oh boy, you could cut the air with a knife. There was tension in the
Yeah.
room because it's, well, who's going to be running this then? These mergers are important, right? So
Mm-hmm.
when you've got these scenarios which have played out over time, because let's go back 15, 20 years ago, PBX vendors like Cisco and Avaya
Mm-hmm.
never developed digital capabilities for their contact centers because it didn't help them sell telephones. That was their
Mm-hmm.
primary motivation. 50% of their
Right.
revenue came from selling handsets, right?
Yep.
So as a result, companies like LivePerson came to market and lots of others that had these separate technologies. And so out of that has grown separate functions, separate
Mm-hmm.
organizations almost within those companies, all achieving success with all equally with their challenges. And so
Mm-hmm.
there's that. It's a mess, to be honest. So if you started with a brand new company, a completely new startup, they will be
Mm-hmm.
in far better position to be able to say, okay, we know we have this team of people that are going to support all of these channels of engagement, we're going to do it all together. So there's as much politics at play in a lot of companies, preventing
Yeah.
organizations from being successful. So there is that. There's this technology consolidation. Obviously, we're here to help that, right?
Right.
That's what we do. We manage all the you can start to consolidate technologies from separate suppliers. That's very key to what we want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But also what we see is a merger of there's multiple post sales or post purchase functions. There's service, there's success, there's renewals,
Mm-hmm.
there's expansions, and often these again are run across different departments. And what
Right.
we're seeing now, the Gartner survey that they've just published, priorities for 2025, generating revenue has shot up to number 2.
Mm.
It was always in there, but it's always way
Yeah.
down. So now what companies are looking at is how do we, if we've got our customer engaged, how do we generate some revenue? So that's a new set of challenges. Oh my God, I've got to train my staff. I've got to train myself. I've got to understand all
Mm-hmm.
about these new technologies. So competing
Yeah.
priorities, it would be so much easier to drop back into a shell and say, I'll do what I've been doing for the last few years and carry on. But unfortunately, as my CEO or the CEO at Gartner, Gene Hall, always said, the pace of change will never be this slow again. And that's something we have to contend with. We know there is massive, change in the pace. So I think it's those are the things that are preventing companies from doing things. And so I think what's really important is we can't just go in there and throw technology at them and say, there's all this stuff. We've got to go in there and say, we understand what your problems are. We understand your challenges. We have some use cases we can demonstrate to you to help you with these challenges that you've got. And it's all about little by little. It's not the big bang approach is very, very difficult to transformation is a multi-year effort in most cases. So getting that bit right. And I think actually, if we go in there and not tell them why our technology is better than the competition, but we say, here's use cases, we recognize the challenges you have. Let us help you solve those. Let's do some examples. Let's do some proof of concepts. Here's some other customers that have been doing the same that you had. I think, from thinking back to those people I used to speak to when I was at Gartner, that would be so much more compelling. Oh my God, someone that understands my problems. I can work with this company. It builds confidence. So I think that's there's tons and tons of technology, but we have to get over the organizational challenges and those are plenty right now.
Yeah, man, so many good things that you touched on in that. Just the first one that came to mind is you kind of talked about like a incremental process, like crawl before you can walk before you can run.
Yeah.
Like I definitely think when it comes to technology, in certain cases, even from my perspective, if I'm looking for some sort of marketing automation platform, like I see it and I'm like, ooh, that looks great. And then I'm like, there are so many steps before that need to be, and things that need to be done and considered before that's a successful outcome. And like you said, talking about the different use cases, digging deeper into those problems. Well, why is that a problem? Like keep asking why, it just helps you get down to the core thing that, okay, what's the priority? Let's start with that priority. Hey, you're not sure how you're going to navigate this? Well, this customer did it through us and this is how they did it. Proof.
Exactly.
Like you said, it tends to carry a lot more weight when it comes from someone else that's not you.
Correct. Absolutely. It's always, not everyone likes to be first, right?
Yeah. 100%. So,
they want to follow.
All right. Let's dig into the Five9 Intelligent CX platform. How has that solution helped solve and address some of the challenges that we chatted about?
I think one of the big ones, actually, and this is where Wilmac fits in, is the organizations, just as they've said, well, we're standardizing our CRM on say, Salesforce. I spoke to a lot of clients that said, we're standardizing globally on a single platform for CRM. Because it's more efficient, you can transfer data. It's just, the visibility is there. And so, big companies, big corporates are doing exactly the same thing with technology. And so they were saying, there's many examples out there of multiple, hundreds in some cases, of small standalone call center solutions, contact center solutions in offices, on premises, and so on. And when they say we're going to consolidate all that into effectively one great solution and to emulate what we've got with Salesforce or Zendesk or whatever, then that is there's a massive project there to say, okay, well, it's not just about managing the phone calls and the phone numbers and the emails. It's about storage. It's about knowledge. It's about everything that goes around that. And all of that is replicated multiple times. So when you move to say, okay, we're going to move to a single consolidated platform, you've got to think about all those additional services that are provided either by you as a company or by partners that come together to make that happen. So doing that single platform, intelligent CX platform is incredibly scalable. We can achieve that level of resilience and scale that customers want. And we can manage all the channels of engagement as they start to consolidate those. And we can manage all the people, and you can create effectively one great big center rather than sort of 200 small centers all working independently. Just anecdotally, it reminds me of a client I was working with in the UK a few years back. They had 3 separate call centers, just 3. They had about 500 employees across 3 standalone call centers, all doing exactly the same thing. And the project leader said to me, we merged the first 2 and then we closed the 3rd because we got such amazing efficiency over standardizing that service. And that's really what we're doing with cloud is that on a much larger scale. I think also access to new technology. So, the ability, the compute that's required for a lot of the, automation and certainly artificial intelligence demands cloud. You just can't do as effectively in premises-based platforms. So when you put all that together, I think having a single point of access to services is efficient. There is a cost saving associated with doing that, but more importantly, what it does is it gives companies access to everything, should we say, from that from that single location. So those, I think, those are some of the really key. And as we scale up, some of the big customers that we got, that's exactly what they've been doing. That big bank that we've been working together with, they have multiple standalone call recording systems, right? All legacy, all closed. Data wasn't accessible, needs to be brought together, needs to be made accessible, and so on. And so, you think of all the call recording companies out there, they weren't all going to work together, right? That weren't going to happen. So, those sorts of things, those are big engineering challenges that cloud can solve. And I think, looking forward where we're at, with things like with Genius AI, being able to, the focus on in the customer service space, automation is big, right? Because there's so much so many interactions that takes place here. Being able to automate those is something that every company wants to do. Customers in many cases would rather be simple things they like to deal with via an intelligent bot rather than waiting to queue over the phone or in messages and so on. So I think the technologies that we bring there to make those more efficient, make those empower the companies to be more effective there. Those are also much easier to just start using. In the old days, if you wanted to implement a new speech analytics product, you needed a business case to buy all the software, all the servers, the project management, and so on. Today, you just turn it on, right? Our AI Insights product, you just turn on, and you start, and automatically you start surfacing all of these conditions and factors that you should be looking at. So, that's the benefit I think that we've got, and especially as we move into this next era of automation in so many areas.
Yeah, you touched on a lot of parallels kind of between Wilmac and Five9 from Five9's intelligence CX platform. Like you said, single portal. You don't want people logging into 18 different places to try to accomplish one thing, and that's kind of where our partnership started to mesh together. We became ISV partners last summer. With our continuity replay, you talked about the storage piece of it. The data that is coming in and out of these contact centers is just so valuable, especially when you got the AI tools coming into the picture, like Genius AI, having all of that data in an accessible format, like you said, that global bank that we're working with together. When you have 6, 7, 8, however many platforms that they had, all with data in proprietary and encrypted formats, they saw no way of getting it into the single pane of glass, like we talked about. That's when we were able to come in and say, we can get that all in one place for you. Eventually, we can take the data that's coming in and out of your Five9 system and, again, consolidate that. So then you just have years and years of historical data. You're complying with your retention regulations. and then you can put that data to use, so the value is there for sure. And I just want to make sure, I know we're a minute over time. Are you okay to keep going? I
Yes,
just
I'm
had
fine. Yeah,
one
I'm
more
sure, no
question
problem.
for you.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then I can let you go. So we're talking about data. Obviously, there's a lot of data going in and out of contact centers. Let me choose what question I actually want to ask you of these two. I guess, what advice would you give organizations looking to leverage data more effectively in their CX strategies?
I think the first thing would be to make the data usable.
Yes.
There is tons of data out there, right? Which sources are you going to use? Interestingly, some of the things we can achieve with generative AI now on answering questions, conversational interfaces. That those are, we don't have to train the bot anymore. We just have to train the language model to understand about our business. But interestingly, one of the biggest challenges is, where do we get the answer from? Right now, it's in many cases, it's the employee.
Yeah.
So the knowledge sources, and actually that was one, Gartner did ask that question in their survey for 2025. Where's your what's one of your biggest challenges? It is actually around collating a common set of knowledge that's going to be used, and how do you keep that knowledge updated? If you got new articles, you refresh articles. You've got to put those into, or the language model needs to be trained on those and new iterations and things. That's actually a big challenge. But I think so. Data is absolutely essential. It's critical on all of these. All of these challenges, but I think starting out with a methodology for getting access to that is very, very important. We talk about contextual data because the contextual element is what's required to personalize the experience that you have with a large language model. So you can have a nice conversational response to a question that a customer asks based on your knowledge sources, but it's not personalized,
right?
Because the internet isn't personalized. You have to create that personalization, and that's the contextual data that exists in platforms like Intelligent CX platform and CRM systems and so on. What was the last thing? When was the last time you connected with us? What was your experience like? What's your empathy rating? What is how valuable are you? Get that from the CRM. All those sorts of things. You put all that together, and so then you're starting to deliver on. I'm going to get shot now, but I don't like hyper personalization. Not because I don't think it's possible. I think we're not there yet. We all know as consumers, there's nothing personalized about our engagement with suppliers. A company's idea of personalization for me is sending me some offers about what I regard as inferior products to the one that I've already bought. That's them trying to sell something else to me, not thinking about what does Steve want. So but data is key to all of those challenges in the automation space. We could do a much better job just of automating it without personalization. Maybe the next stage on from that is, okay, now let's inject some personalization into this to make it more relevant to the individual customer. Now, ultimately, I part of my job is evangelism, and being an evangelist, I have a little bit of poetic license in terms of how I pitch the future. I'm very big on digital twins a customer. This was a Gartner thing that I learned. This idea, digital twins are well known, right? So a jet engine will have a digital twin. They're collecting all this data. They'll know when it's going to fail. So you collect all this data about your customer. So you know exactly what they want to do, you know exactly when they want to do it, and what stresses them out and so on. So you have all that data and insights. And I would then say that when we get to the point in the 2030s, when we have autonomous AI agents, the ultimate AI agent is a machine customer. So, for example, you will book an appointment, okay, or a meeting in your calendar. It does require you to travel because the software knows where you live or where you work, and within 10 minutes your entire agenda is published there in exactly the way you would have done it.
Yeah.
And that's because the software knows who you are and knows all about you. And so I think, you can't do that without having good data.
Yeah.
Now, it does bring to question all the challenges around privacy.
Mm-hmm.
And those are not to be underestimated.
Yeah.
The US seems to be taking a slightly different approach to privacy than, say, Europe, where the EU is our guardian for all of our data. But we'll get to a point where companies will have access to data. It will be more real time. It will be relevant. They'll be able to create and mold these experiences that will be personalized.
Mm-hmm.
With, in some cases, without actually knowing who the customer is, but things will become more relevant, and I think we'll get there in time. But it will take a while before we get to that point. But yeah, so data is the new buzzword, shall we say? It's inherent in absolutely everything that we're trying to do.
Yeah. No, that's very interesting. Dang, I could ask you a million more questions, I feel like, but I know we're already running over time. So I will close this out, and Steve, ask you one last question. Are there any final thoughts or things you'd like to mention before I wrap us up?
I think for us, what we need to look at very carefully is what is achievable this year. I think there's a lot of things we can achieve, but we mustn't go beyond what the possible with our customers. So, talking about the art of the possible is a lovely idea. But when we're out there saying, look, we can help you with the challenges you've got. We know what your priorities are this year. I'm not going to tell you because everyone else will know what they are. They're a secret. We know what their priorities are, right? Yeah. And so what we're going to do is say, okay, we've got some solutions that help you achieve this. I'm looking up in things like LinkedIn, and so many comments about people saying, yeah, you would think this vendor, you read what they've written, you'd think they've never worked in a customer service center before. And that's unfortunately, that's very, very true. They don't. And I've never worked in a customer service center, but I know people who have. And a lot of my insights come from those audiences. And that's the whole point of what we're doing. Market intelligence is about understanding the challenges in the market. So apart from a brief stint being on site one time when the management information system was down in one of my customers going back 30 years, and feeling the pressure of, oh my God, they're trying to run their operation without any data, any real-time information. That's about as close as I've got to running a customer service center. But I do a lot of listening. I glean all these insights, and we use those to really sort of drive our understanding. And I think if you show you understand, if you come up with the use cases and the examples, I think that you're more credible. And that's really what our objective, especially after last year and some of the challenges that everyone had around automation and bots. I think being credible this year is going to be incredibly important. There we are.
Love it. Ending on a pun. That is my type of ending. Thank you for sharing that, Steve. And thank you again for joining me on the Wilmac Wire today. For any of our listeners who are interested in learning more about Steve, you can find Steve on LinkedIn. That's Steve Blood. And honestly, if you Google Steve Blood 5.9, you're going to find a lot of good articles about Steve. So, like I mentioned earlier on in the podcast, I personally enjoyed reading the Why I Joined Five9 article that's on Five9's website. Same thing too with finding more information about Five9. You can find their website at www.five spelled out FIVE9 And to find out more about Continuity Replay and Wilmac and Five9's partnership, you can find it on Five9 CX Marketplace, or you can head to our website, which is wilmactech.com. Steve, like I mentioned again, thank you for joining me on the Wilmac Wire. I really enjoyed our conversation. We could probably keep going, but I know I'm just starting my day and you're wrapping yours up, being in a different time zone. So I will let you go. And I look forward to chatting with you again in the future. So
thanks ever so much,
thank you again, Steve.
Great to speak with you. All the best. Take care.
All the best. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Wilmac Wire. Make sure you never miss an episode by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform or visiting our website at www.wilmactech.com. You can also watch the full video recordings of every episode on our YouTube channel. Thank you for being a part of our community, and again, Thank you for listening to the Wilmac Wire.